Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're getting into a really influential book, Peter Thiel's Zero to One. It's subtitled Notes on Startups or How to Build the Future.
That's right. And Thiel, well, he's got the background, doesn't he? Co-founder of PayPal, Palantir, early money into Facebook, SpaceX.
Yeah, he's definitely been in the trenches. But this book, it feels like more than just business tips. It's almost a philosophy of progress.
Absolutely. And what's key right up front is he says there's no formula. That's the paradox, right? If you're really creating something new, 0 to 1, there can't be a formula.
Okay.
So our mission today, I think, is to unpack his core thinking. His contrarian takes on things like competition, why he thinks aiming for a kind of monopoly is actually good, and how we should, think about building what's next. He wants us to look for value where maybe others aren't.
Right. Finding value in unexpected places by thinking from first principles, he calls it. Okay, so let's dive in. He starts with this fundamental idea about progress itself, the difference between horizontal and vertical progress. How does he break that down?
So horizontal progress, that's what he calls one to N. It's basically copying things that work. Globalization is the big example, taking a successful model from, say, the US and replicating it in China.
Okay, spreading existing ideas.
Exactly. Vertical progress, though, that's the 0 to 1. That's doing something completely new, creating new technology. And technology for him is broad. It's not just computers. It's any new and better way of doing things.
And he argues that the vertical, the 0 to 1, is what really drives fundamental change.
That's his core argument, yeah. That's where new wealth and possibilities are actually created rather than just rearranging the existing pieces.
He uses history to back this up,
Right.
looking at different eras.
He does. He points to 1815 to 1914, a time of both rapid technological leaps and globalization. Then World War I up to about 1971, you saw incredible tech progress planes, atomic energy, but maybe less global integration compared to before.
And then after 71.
That's when he sees this big surge in globalization, but argues that really new tech became more concentrated, mainly in IT. We took existing tech global, but maybe invented less truly fundamental stuff outside of computers and the internet.
What's the big takeaway from that period before the 70s, that stretch from the steam engine onwards?
It's that sustained, relentless technological progress, as he puts it. For centuries before that, things moved much, much slower. It was that era, starting in the late 1700s, that really built the modern world we live in. It wasn't automatic. It was invention, that 0 to 1 stuff that pulled societies out of basically zero-sum conditions.
Okay, so if this 0 to 1 progress is so crucial, where does it actually come from? He champions the startup. Why startups?
Well, he contrasts them with other ways things get done. Big organizations, he argues, tend to get bureaucratic, slow, risk-averse. Lone geniuses are great, but often can't execute on a large scale. The startup hits the sweet spot. It's small enough to think radically, to have a shared mission, but potentially large enough to actually, change the world. His definition is interesting. The largest group of people you can convince of a plan to build a different future.
It's not just about being small and fast. It's the plan, the new thinking.
Exactly. New thinking is the key, not just agility.
And he contrasts this kind of bold, different future thinking with the lessons people took away from the dot-com bust in the late 90s. Those lessons seem sensible, but he thinks they led us down a less ambitious path.
Yeah, it's a really interesting point. After the crash, the sort of accepted wisdom became, number 1, make only incremental advances, don't try to boil the ocean.
Okay, baby steps.
2, stay lean and flexible, avoid big, bold visions. 3, improve on the competition, don't try to create a whole new market. And 4, focus on product, not sales or marketing, assuming great products sell themselves.
Which all sounds reasonable.
On the surface, yeah. But Thiel's critique is that these lessons, taken together, created this era of indefinite optimism. We sort of hoped the future would get better, but we shied away from making concrete, ambitious plans for making it better. Globalization, the one-to-N stuff, became the main hope, not radical new tech, the 0 to 1.
So that caution led away from the big leaps. And this brings us neatly to one of his most famous, maybe controversial, ideas. The case for monopoly. Most people hear monopoly and think bad, price gouging, lack of choice.
Right. And he tackles that head on. First, he defines his terms. Perfect competition, loads of businesses selling undifferentiated products, price takers. Monopoly is the business that's so dominant in its market it can set its own price.
Okay.
But crucially, he's not talking about monopolies created by illegal means or corrupt government deals. He means a company that is just so good at what it does that no other firm can offer a close substitute. Google in search is his go-to example.
But still, the worry is they exploit that position, right?
Yeah. He says that's true in a static world. If nothing changes, a monopolist can just collect rent, basically. But the world isn't static. In a dynamic world, he argues, these creative monopolies are actually forces for good. They invent totally new categories of product.
Like the iPhone example you mentioned earlier.
Exactly. Apple created something new, giving customers way more choice than they had before, even though Apple dominated that new smartphone space for a while. He sees patents as the government trying to create temporary monopolies precisely to incentivize this kind of costly, risky innovation.
So the promise of potentially large, long-term profits is what fuels the really big breakthroughs.
That's the core idea. The history of progress, in his view, is a history of better monopolies replacing incumbents. Firms stuck in brutal competition just don't have the breathing room or the resources to make those huge R&D bets.
And he thinks economists miss this because they're obsessed with the perfect competition model.
Yeah, he's quite critical there. He sees that model as static, like physics, aiming for equilibrium. But in business, equilibrium means stasis. It means death. If you're just one commodity producer among many, you don't really matter. It's the escape from competition into uniqueness that defines success.
It definitely turns the usual business mantra on its head. So if monopoly is the goal, what about competition itself? He seems to view it pretty negatively.
He really does. He pushes back hard against that competition is good, default. He says business competition is often like war, hugely destructive, costly, and ultimately kind of pointless.
War. That's strong.
He uses Shakespeare, Romeo and Juliet. The Montagues and Capulets are so focused on their rivalry they lose sight of everything important, and it ends in disaster. He sees the same pattern in business. Microsoft versus Google, for instance. They got so obsessed with each other that Apple kind of snuck past them both.
That's his reading, yeah. The intense focus on the rival blinded them to the bigger shifts happening.
He gives other examples too, right? Like with those mobile payment gadgets. Right. Square comes along with a simple, elegant solution. And what happens? A flood of imitators, all focused on slightly tweaking Square's model, fighting over tiny differences. That's imitative competition, not fundamental creation.
It becomes about beating the other guy, not building something new.
Exactly. He even makes this slightly provocative suggestion that maybe having some traits associated with Asperger's, like less sensitivity to social cues, might be an advantage in Silicon Valley because you're less likely to just copy what everyone else is doing. You follow your own logic more.
Huh. And he has personal experience with destructive competition from the early PayPal days, doesn't he?
Oh, yeah. The war between PayPal and Elon Musk's X.com, he describes it as incredibly intense, insane hours, total focus on destroying the competitor, even apparently a joke about designing a bomb to take out their office. It sounds extreme, but it illustrates his point. Competition can make you irrational and destructive.
So recognizing the destructive potential is key.
He thinks it's a sign of sanity in business, yeah, not getting caught up in the rivalry itself.
Okay, so if you want to build one of these creative monopolies, what does it look like? What are the hallmarks?
Thiel outlines 4 main characteristics that tend to lead to large future cash flows, which is his definition of a valuable monopoly. First, proprietary technology, something unique and hard to replicate. Second, network effects, where the product becomes more useful as more people use it, think Facebook or eBay. Third, economies of scale, getting stronger as you get bigger, like software businesses where the cost of producing one more copy is near zero.
And fourth,
branding, creating a powerful, distinct identity that resonates deeply. Think Apple again.
let's go back to proprietary tech. He has this rule of thumb, right? The 10x better rule.
Yeah, this is crucial. He argues that to really break through and establish dominance, your solution needs to be at least 10 times better than the closest alternative on some important dimension. Marginal improvements like 10 or 20% better usually aren't enough to get people to switch.
So what does 10x look like?
It could be a brand new invention, like his hypothetical sleep elimination drug that's infinitely better than needing sleep. Or it could be vastly superior integrated design. He argues the iPad wasn't the first tablet, but it was so much better designed and integrated than what came before. It felt like a 10x leap.
Got it. And strategy matters too, how you enter the market. He talks about sequencing.
Yes, starting small. Dominate a specific niche market first, nail it, become the clear leader there, then scale up and expand into adjacent markets. Amazon starting with books is the classic example. Don't try to conquer the world on day one.
And this connects to his critique of the word disruption. which is everywhere in tech talk.
He's quite skeptical of that buzzword. He feels it frames startups purely in opposition to existing players. It makes you focus on the old industry you're supposedly disrupting, rather than on creating something entirely new and positive in its own right.
Like you're defined by your enemy.
Exactly. True creation, he thinks, is more valuable than just fighting incumbents. He points to Napster, totally disruptive, focused on taking down the music industry, and it got crushed by legal battles. A focus on disruption can attract the wrong kind of attention.
This idea of focusing on creation leads into another big theme.
Yeah.
Having a definite versus an indefinite view of the future. This feels really central to his whole worldview.
It really is. It's about whether you believe you can shape the future through deliberate planning and action. A definite view means you have specific goals and you work towards them. An indefinite view means you see the future as fundamentally uncertain, maybe random, so you focus on options and flexibility rather than concrete plans.
And he sees a historical shift here.
Yeah, he argues that the Western world, roughly from the 17th century through the 1960s, operated with definite optimism. People believed the future could be better, and they had ambitious plans to make it so. Think big infrastructure projects, the Apollo program, even during tough times like the Depression.
Okay, definite optimism.
Yeah.
We know where we want to go, and we can build it.
Right. But since around the early 80s, he argues, America shifted to indefinite optimism. There's still a general belief things will improve, but we don't have specific grand plans anymore. Progress is expected to just sort of happen.
What are the consequences of that indefinite mindset, according to him?
A big one is a focus on process over substance. If you don't know what future you want to build, you focus on optimizing the present. This, he thinks, explains the rise of fields like finance, law, consulting. They're about rearranging existing value or managing risk in an unpredictable world rather than creating fundamentally new things.
So less building, more shuffling.
In a way, yeah. He even connects it to philosophy Rawls and Nozick, focusing on just procedures, not a vision of the good life. And in science, like drug discovery, relying on massive random screening instead of deep hypothesis-driven research. His bottom line is, indefinite optimism can't last. Real progress needs plans.
Which brings us to his call for a return of design. And this isn't just about making things look nice.
Not at all. He uses Steve Jobs and Apple as the prime example. Yes, aesthetics mattered hugely, but Jobs' real design genius, Thiel argues, was designing the entire business. Meticulous, multi-year planning for products and their distribution. Not just reacting to focus groups or competitors.
So careful planning over just iterating or copying.
Exactly. He contrasts this with the lean startup emphasis on minimum viable products and constant pivoting. Thiel favors bold, long-term vision and execution.
And companies that do have these definite plans, he says, can actually be undervalued in our indefinite world.
Yeah.
Like the Facebook-Yahoo story.
Precisely. When Yahoo offered $1 billion for Facebook back in '06, it seemed like a lot. But Zuckerberg had a definite vision for Facebook becoming much, much bigger, a vision Yahoo didn't fully grasp. Thiel argues that in an indefinitely optimistic world, people struggle to price businesses built on bold, specific plans for the future. They prefer things that look like lottery tickets.
So a startup, done right, is a way to exert definite control, to reject chance.
It's the largest endeavor, he says, where you can have that kind of definite mastery over a piece of the future.
Okay, shifting gears slightly. Venture capital. Thiel's deep in this world. And he introduces the power law concept. What is that, and why is it so important?
The power law is fundamental to understanding VC returns. It basically says that the distribution of outcomes is incredibly skewed. A tiny handful of investments in a venture fund will generate returns equal to or greater than all the other investments combined.
Wow, really? That extreme?
Yeah. He calls it the Matthew Principle. To those who have, more will be given. Success compounds dramatically. He gives the example of Founders Fund's investment in Facebook. It returned more than the rest of their entire 2005 fund put together. Their second best, Palantir, looked set to return more than everything else except Facebook.
So it's not about hitting singles and doubles, it's about finding that one grand slam.
That's exactly it. You need those outlier successes to make the whole portfolio work. It's not a normal distribution where most companies are average. It's a power law distribution with a few massive winners and lots of companies that return little or nothing.
Why do people, even VCs sometimes, not fully grasp this power law dynamic in practice?
Well, a few reasons. One, it plays out over many years. And day-to-day life deals with more average situations. You spend time evaluating lots of companies that won't be huge winners.
You're in the weeds.
Exactly. And ironically, VCs often spend a disproportionate amount of time trying to fix their struggling investments, the ones that are not following the power law curve upwards, rather than just focusing all their energy on the runaway successes. So your daily experience can kind of mask the underlying reality of where the value is truly generated.
But despite being a small part of the economy numerically, these venture-backed companies have a huge impact overall.
Absolutely massive. He points out they create a huge percentage of new jobs and contribute significantly to GDP. Most of the tech giants shaping our world today started with venture funding. This highlights their role in driving that 0 to 1 progress.
And the implication for individuals.
It suggests that if you're talented, joining a company that's already on that steep upward trajectory, one of those power law winners, could actually be a far better bet than trying to start your own thing from scratch, just statistically speaking.
Interesting. Okay, let's talk about stagnation and this idea of secrets. What's Thiel getting at here?
He starts with this framework from Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber, but Thiel finds the specific idea useful about problems being easy, hard, or impossible. Kaczynski argued modern malaise comes from people feeling like all the hard but solvable problems have been done, leaving only trivial stuff or impossible dreams. Yeah.
So a lack of meaningful challenges.
Sort of. Thiel connects this feeling to things like hipster culture, the obsession with vintage, seeing it as nostalgia for a time when the future felt more open, more full of possibility. He also criticizes fundamentalist thinking, both religious and secular, for dividing the world into easy certainties and impenetrable mysteries, leaving no room for the difficult, undiscovered truths, the secrets.
So a world without secrets is complacent.
Yeah, if you believe all the important questions are already answered, why bother looking for new frontiers? He uses historical examples like the injustice of slavery was once a kind of secret, hidden by convention. Uncovering such secrets drives progress.
And he uses Hewlett-Packard's story as a warning.
Right. HP had this amazing innovative past, but then, he argues, they stopped believing in invention. They focused on process, management, mergers, internal politics, and the company's value collapsed. They lost that drive to find the next big secret, the next 0 to 1.
So the core message is, keep looking for important truths that aren't widely known or accepted.
Exactly. You have to believe there are still secrets out there. He mentions Andrew Wiles working for years in secret on Fermat's last theorem. That required a deep belief that a solution existed, even when it seemed impossible. Great companies, Thiel says, are built around such secrets, shared among the founding team.
Which brings us to those founding moments. He really stresses how critical the initial setup of a company is.
Hugely important. He compares it to founding a country. The initial choices, the constitution you set up, have incredibly long-lasting effects. Bad decisions early on, especially about people, are really hard to undo later.
Getting the foundation right is paramount.
It's maybe the founder's most critical job. You can't build a great company on a shaky foundation.
And the choice of co-founder is especially key. He compares it to marriage.
He does. He says founder conflict is probably the single biggest killer of early-stage companies. So choosing who you start the company with is vital. Ideally, he suggests, founders should have a prehistory together, work together before, know each other well, because the startup journey is intense.
And beyond the founders, getting alignment right within the whole team is crucial. Ownership, possession, control.
Yes, he breaks down how people relate to the company. Ownership like equity, possession, actual day-to-day work and control over it, and formal control like board seats. Equity is the obvious tool for alignment, making everyone owners.
But distributing equity isn't simple.
No. He argues against just giving everyone equal shares, saying it has to reflect different contributions and risks. Vesting over time is essential to keep people committed for the long haul. But done right, equity is the best mechanism to align everyone towards creating long-term value.
And this founding isn't just a one-time thing.
Right, he quotes Dylan. He who is not busy being born is busy dying. The founding spirit, the mission, the shared understanding that needs to be continually reinforced. He talks about the early PayPal team being obsessed with creating a new currency, bonded by shared nerdy interests. That culture extended the founding moment.
Okay, now something Thiel thinks gets seriously overlooked, especially by tech folks. Sales and distribution.
Oh yeah, he hits this hard. He calls out the field of dreams fallacy in Silicon Valley, this belief that if you build an amazing product, Customers will just magically appear.
If you build it, they will come.
He says that's almost always wrong. Distribution, actually getting the product to the people who will use it, is just as critical as the product itself. A great product with no way to sell it is a failed business.
And good sales often hides itself. People don't like feeling sold to.
Exactly. He points out all the euphemisms: account executive, business development, investment banker, even politician. Lots of jobs are fundamentally sales, but we use different words. It's because we're inherently suspicious of being persuaded.
He even warns startups off big ad campaigns, using that PayPal Scotty example.
Right. Trying to use James Doohan from Star Trek as a spokesperson just fell flat for PayPal. They couldn't compete with the budgets and brand recognition of, say, Priceline using William Shatner effectively. Startups need smarter distribution strategies.
And he believes in focusing efforts. The power law again.
Yes, the power law of distribution. He argues that typically one single distribution channel will be vastly more effective for your business than all others combined. So figure out which channel works, whether it's viral marketing, direct sales, partnerships, whatever, and nail that one channel. Don't spread yourself thin trying everything.
And selling isn't just to customers.
Good point. You're constantly selling the company vision to employees, to investors. Everyone in the company, even if it's just one person starting out, is effectively in sales.
Okay, near the end here, he talks about humans and computers' complementarity, not just replacement.
Yeah, he pushes back against the simple AI will take all the jobs narrative.
Yeah.
He argues technology works best when it complements human abilities. Humans provide intention, judgment, creativity. Computers provide massive data processing power. The real gains come from working together.
So computers are tools, not rivals.
That's his view. We get much more leverage working with computers than just trading with other countries, for instance. He cautions against being too mesmerized by big data itself and focusing instead on how computers help humans solve hard problems.
What about the fear of superintelligence, strong AI?
He acknowledges it as a theoretical possibility, way down the line perhaps, but he argues it's an indefinite worry that shouldn't stop us from definite planning now. We should focus on using the tools we have to build a better world today, not get paralyzed by distant maybe apocalypses. And again, aim for that 10x improvement to make a real difference.
He uses the clean tech bubble as a case study for getting things wrong, particularly around timing and strategy.
Yes, a powerful cautionary tale. Many clean tech companies, despite good intentions, fail because they didn't meet that 10x tech threshold. They misjudged market timing, assuming exponential growth where it was linear. They didn't have a clear plan to dominate a specific niche, and often had the wrong kind of leadership suits chasing subsidies rather than engineers building breakthroughs.
And Tesla succeeded where others failed.
He argues Tesla got the key questions right. They had unique tech, good timing, leveraging a specific government loan window, a plan to dominate the high-end market first, the right team, good distribution, and enduring secret or vision. It wasn't just about being in a big market, it was about having a winning strategy for a specific part of it.
Okay, wrapping up, he introduces this idea of the founder's paradox. What's that about?
He looks at the often unusual, even extreme profiles of successful founders, including the PayPal group. They often seem to embody contradictions: insider and outsider, arrogant and insecure, rich on paper but maybe broke personally.
Like Richard Branson cultivating an image.
Yeah, Branson is a good example of someone playing up extreme traits. He suggests founders occupy these liminal spaces. Their success or failure gets magnified, leading to almost mythical public perceptions, whether it's Howard Hughes or Steve Jobs returning to Apple.
So it takes a certain kind of unusual person, perhaps.
Maybe. Or perhaps the process of founding itself creates these extremes. But the main point comes back to the book's title and core theme. The future isn't predetermined, it has to be built. And building it requires that unique, singular 0-to-1 thinking, driven by definite plans.
So to quickly recap the big takeaways from 0 to 1, it's about creating new value, not just competing. Aiming for that creative monopoly through real innovation. Understanding that competition can be destructive. The power of definite plans over vague optimism.
Right, and remembering the power law governs success in ventures, the importance of seeking out those hidden secrets, getting the foundations right, and never underestimating sales and distribution.
It's a lot to chew on, a really different way of looking at business and progress.
Definitely. So maybe a final thought for listeners. Think about your own field, your own work. Is there a convention everyone accepts? Is there a potential 10x improvement nobody's pursuing? What's a secret hiding in plain sight that could unlock a 0-to-1 change?
That's a great challenge. We definitely recommend checking out Peter Thiel's 0 to 1 for a deeper dive. Thanks for exploring these ideas with us today.